No one ever walked in that park. I made the mistake of doing so, and what I saw under that broken light still gives me the creeps every night. People think heartbreak makes you reckless, that you drink too much, send late-night texts, or try to fill the space with noise. But for me, it was the opposite. When Amy left, she didn't slam doors or shout. She just said she couldn't do it anymore, stood in the doorway for a long moment, then walked out. I didn't say anything. There wasn't anything left to say. I stayed in that apartment for 3 more weeks, long enough for the walls to start echoing, long enough to realize I couldn't stand the sound of my own thoughts anymore. So I packed up and moved west, somewhere quiet, somewhere small. That's how I found Maple Hollow. It was the kind of suburb that looked calm even when the weather wasn't. Rows of aging houses, pine trees bowing over narrow streets, fog that came down from the hills and never quite left. My rental was a 2-bedroom Craftsman with chipped blue paint and creaky floorboards. It wasn't much, but it was mine. About 3 blocks down from my place, beyond a little footbridge that crossed a dry creek bed, was Oak Ridge Trail Park. You'd almost miss it if you weren't looking. The gate was rusted, half off its hinges, the sign so warped by rain you could barely read it. Inside, the path was cracked and uneven, overrun with weeds. Moss covered the benches. The lampposts flickered weakly, and even the air felt still, like the park had been left behind by time itself. No one ever went there, not once. No joggers, no kids, no couples, not even a stray dog. It should have been the perfect walking spot for the older folks around town, but it was always empty. Every night, as I passed through that gate, I wondered why. I told myself I didn't mind. I wanted quiet. I wanted to breathe again. I started going every night after dinner, AirPods in, podcasts about letting go and finding yourself playing just loud enough to drown everything out. For the first few nights, it worked. The fog, the cold, the sound of gravel underfoot. It all helped. Until the 3rd night. The first night I noticed her. I'd only been walking the trail for about 10 minutes. The fog had rolled in heavier than usual, curling low to the ground. The lampposts threw halos of dim light that barely cut through it. I was halfway down the path when I saw movement near one of them. Something hunched low in the brush, just under a flickering lamp. At first, I thought it was a pile of clothes or a bag, but then the shape shifted slightly, and I realized it was a person, an old woman. She was crouched down, close to the dirt. Her white hair hung in messy tangles over her face, her shoulders trembling slightly. From where I stood, maybe 30 feet away, she looked frail, confused. Her hands were near the ground, doing something I couldn't quite make out. I slowed, unsure if I should say something, but she didn't move, didn't look up, just kept whatever she was doing, in silence. So I kept walking. As I passed, a faint smell hit me, sharp and sour, like spoiled food. It lingered only a moment before the wind shifted. I figured maybe she was living out there, maybe had trash or food nearby. I didn't think much of it. The second night, I hesitated before going out. The house was quiet, too quiet, every small sound reminding me of how much space Amy used to take up. So I put in my AirPods again and went anyway. The podcast that night was about emotional detachment. I didn't really listen. I just needed to not hear the silence. The fog was even thicker. The park looked like it was holding its breath. About halfway through the loop, I smelled it again. Faint at first, then stronger the closer I got to the same bend in the trail. It wasn't garbage this time. It was heavier, wrong, like meat that had been left out too long. And there she was again. Same place, same crouched posture. Under the weak light, she looked smaller somehow. Still, I could see her arms moving, slow, deliberate. The smell was stronger near her, thick enough to make my throat tighten. I kept walking, but curiosity made me glance again. Her hands were buried in the dirt, moving in small circles. I told myself maybe she was digging for food, or just keeping herself busy. I didn't want to get closer. As I passed, I took one AirPod out. For a second, I thought I heard something, a sound too soft to be clear, wet maybe, slow. I shook it off, probably just the wind, I shoved the AirPod back in and didn't look again. By the third night, I tried to tell myself I wouldn't go. But the walls of that house felt like they were closing in, so I went anyway. The air felt colder that night. The fog rolled low and heavy across the street, swallowing everything past a few yards. Even before I reached the gate, I caught the smell, faint but unmistakable now, rot, metallic and sweet in a way that made my stomach twist. I stepped through the gate. The gravel crunched louder than usual beneath my boots. Each step echoed into the fog like the park was listening. Halfway down the trail, my throat started to tighten. The smell was everywhere. It coated the back of my tongue. And then I saw her again, in the same spot, under the same flickering light. She was crouched down, her body still and low, but her hands, they were moving. Slow, repetitive, digging, or maybe feeding. I couldn't tell. I took out both AirPods. The world went dead quiet. Then I heard it. A sound I'll never forget. Wet, sticky, chewing. It was slow, rhythmic, animal. I froze where I stood, my heart hammering so loud it drowned out everything else. I told myself I should leave, but instead I stepped closer. 10, maybe 12 feet away now. Close enough to smell the rot burning in the air. Close enough to see that whatever she was doing, it wasn't digging. I hesitated, then raised my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam hit the ground first. Rats. Half a dozen of them, maybe more, torn open, blood soaked into the dirt, fur matted and blackened. One of them still twitched, reflexes long after death. The smell hit me so hard I gagged. Then the light climbed higher, catching her hands, slick, glistening red. She was holding something limp. It took me a second to understand what it was, a rat's lower half. She was clutching it like food. My stomach turned. I raised the light higher, and she turned. Her head snapped around so fast I flinched, the beam shaking in my hand. Her eyes caught the light first, glassy and wide, reflecting like an animal's, but empty. Her mouth was still moving. I could see her jaw working, the wet sound of it echoing in the silence. And then I saw it, the upper half of a rat, small, limp, still clenched between her teeth. Its tail hung from her lips, twitching in the breeze. For a split second, my mind refused to understand. My body went numb, frozen in the kind of fear that doesn't feel like fear at first. My heart was pounding, but everything else inside me just stopped. Her face, God, her face didn't look right. Her skin looked stretched too tight in places and sagged in others, like it was barely clinging to her bones. Her lips were cracked, split, bleeding. Her chin glistened with red that wasn't hers. When our eyes met, I swear something in her expression changed, like she realized she wasn't alone. Her lips parted wider, the rat dropping from her mouth with a wet slap onto the dirt, and she let out a sound that didn't belong in any human throat, a deep animal growl that seemed to rattle inside her chest, and then she moved. She lunged forward, not standing, but crawling, jerking forward in bursts like some broken machine. Her hands tore at the ground, her knees bending the wrong way, her breath coming out in short, guttural hisses. I turned and ran. The moment I did, I heard her. The sharp scrape of nails digging into dirt, the slap of her palms against the path, her breath wheezing behind me like something feral trying to keep pace. The rhythm of it was chaotic, too fast, too close. I ran harder. My lungs burned, the air slicing down my throat. The fog swallowed the path ahead, and the faint beam of my phone shook wildly in my hand. Every time my foot hit the pavement, it echoed back at me, and beneath it, the sound of her limbs pounding the ground, faster, erratic, closing in. The gate came into view, a dark outline through the fog. My body screamed to stop, but I didn't. I threw my shoulder into it, slammed through the metal, and stumbled onto the sidewalk. My chest seized as I gasped for air, legs barely keeping me upright. For a moment, the world was silent again. No footsteps, no scraping, no breath but my own. I didn't look back. Not until I reached my house 2 blocks away, fumbling the keys in shaking hands. Just before I opened the door, I turned. Nothing. No one in the street. No sound. Just the fog, thick and slow, rolling between the houses. She wasn't there. And somehow, that felt worse. I locked the door twice and collapsed on the couch, shaking. It took me 5 minutes before I could even move. Then I called 911. My voice barely worked as I told them what I'd seen. The dispatcher asked 3 times if I was sure it was a person. "I don't know," I said. "I don't fucking know." 2 officers showed up maybe 20 minutes later. One older, one younger. The older one took notes, while the younger hovered near his holster. They didn't say much, just exchanged looks. I led them to the park. Even standing by the gate made my skin crawl. The smell was still faintly there. We walked in together. Their flashlights cut through the fog. When we reached the bend under the broken light, the older cop froze. "Jesus Christ," the younger one muttered. The rats were there, exactly as I'd seen them, torn open, blood crusted into the dirt. The younger cop turned, gagged, then stumbled off the path and threw up into the bushes. But she wasn't there. No footprints, no tracks, nothing. They called it in for cleanup, muttering about coyotes or some kind of wild animal. Maybe a bobcat, maybe something sick. "Yeah," I muttered, voice hollow. "Sure, a bobcat." They walked me home and told me to stay with someone for the night. So I did. I crashed at my friend Evan's place across town. Didn't explain much, just said I couldn't stay at mine. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, those eyes catching the light, the twitch of her jaw, the blood running down her chin. The next morning, I called my landlord and told him I needed to break the lease. I didn't care about the penalty. I just had to leave. It took a week to move out. Even in Evan's spare room, I could still smell it sometimes. That same sweet, metallic rot drifting in through dreams I didn't want to have. I told myself it would stop when I moved. It didn't. A week later, I was unpacking in my new apartment across town. The night was quiet, peaceful. I remember standing by the window for a moment, enjoying that silence again, and then I smelled it. Faint, but unmistakable. Sweet, sour, metallic, rot. I froze. A moment later, I heard it. Soft, deliberate scratching, like nails dragging gently across wood. I stood there for a long time, staring at the window, listening. Eventually the sound stopped, but the smell stayed, and I knew I wouldn't sleep that night either. And when I closed my eyes, I saw her again, that face turning toward me through the beam of my flashlight, those hollow eyes catching the light, her lips slick with blood, that half-eaten rat still hanging from her mouth. The image comes back every night, clearer than it should. It's what I dream about now, even when I'm awake. It's been 7 months now. I've had my share of long, disturbed nights since, and who knows how many more are still waiting.